thank you so much for everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you getting on this webinar, and thank Andrea Kirshenbaum with Post Schell for presenting this information to us. We know there's lots of questions about vaccinations and your employees and navigating what you should be doing or can do or can't do. And we thought this would be some important information for you to hear and then for you to ask some questions at the end. With that, I'd like to introduce Andrea Kirshenbaum. She is with Post Schell. And with that, I'm going to give it over to you, Andrea.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's gotten on the call today. My name is Andrea Kirshenbaum, and I am the chair of the Employment and Labor Practice Group at Post Schell. And I have been doing a lot of work in the vaccination space. And my goal here today is to share with you what the current landscape is. This has been an evolving conversation over the last few months. And now I think we're at an inflection point. Many organizations that were hesitant in certainly in the fall and the winter to consider mandating the vaccine are now more and more circling back to that initial decision not to mandate and thinking about whether they should mandate, as both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines have now sought not only emergency use authorization, but regular authorization that's pending. So, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of vaccine hesitancy. And I think that's changed over time, although there's a significant portion of the workforce that they're still hesitant. But many businesses are really looking to get, as much a return to normalcy as possible. And many view vaccines as a very significant piece of that puzzle. I just have up on the screen sort of the current state of affairs where we are. As of June 1st, an estimated 40% of the United States population was fully vaccinated, meaning that they're at least 2 weeks out of their second vaccine for Pfizer and Moderna, and 2 weeks out of from their J&J vaccine. But the rate of vaccination has slowed. So will Americans continue to be voluntarily vaccinated? I think that 74% from the Gallup poll saying that they would is much higher than it was 6 months before. So we're moving in the right direction, but still there are lots of questions, and there's a significant portion of the population that is not yet vaccinated. So many employers at the beginning decided that they were going to encourage, suggest, cajole. Some organizations have offered incentives, and there was a gray area at a point in time from the EEOC as to whether incentives were permissible. They came out last week and they said you can offer incentives so long as they're not coercive. So what's coercive, what's not coercive? The EEOC unfortunately didn't tell us, but it can't be so significant. But if you're thinking about incentivizing your workforce, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end about that, that's certainly something to consider. Encouragement plus, I would call that. Some organizations have said, well, there's a certain segment of our workforce that's really important that they're vaccinated, so we're going to mandate vaccine for that segment of the workforce and work through the process that way. And other organizations have said, look, we're going to mandate. And I think you're increasingly seeing that with colleges and universities that are mandating. The University of Pennsylvania announced a couple of weeks ago that not only the university, but also the employees and staff need to be vaccinated. I believe it's by September 1st. So the tide is shifting, and some large organizations are deciding to mandate after they had not at the beginning. So I've litigated several cases involving flu vaccinations. Many healthcare employers have mandated the flu vaccine in the past. And so I'm here to share with you many of the lessons learned in litigating those flu vaccine cases so that you all can avoid the pitfalls that other organizations potentially have had, and assess what the legal risk is and the analysis from looking at that case law. So any mandate process, if you decide we're going to mandate the COVID vaccine, you need to have an exemption process for religion and for disability. So this is the step-by-step way to think about it. First, you need to create that policy we're going to mandate, and then you work through how it's going to work, nuts and bolts, and then you put together a communication plan. You have to figure out, well, who's going to decide the exemption request? Is it a human resources person? Is it a business professional? And create that process so you can create the forms that you need to do that process. You need to educate the decision makers as to what, how to go through the process. And then you have to roll out that communication piece to employees and make decisions as to whether someone can be exempt from the COVID vaccine. So I have up on the screen, this is just the definition of religion under Title VII in the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. You are required to reasonably accommodate religious belief, and also you're required to accommodate for disability, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So I'm going to talk briefly about a case that was decided several years ago by the Third Circuit. This is the case law that governs the lay of the land at this point. In 2012, the hospital began requiring employee flu vaccinations, and employees had to fill out a form indicating that they wanted an exemption and provide the basis for that exemption request. The employee who had submitted requests previously had outlined what he viewed or he expressed as his sincerely held beliefs. Those beliefs were set out in a long essay, and really it was an anti-vaccination belief, a concern about pharmaceutical companies, things of that nature, and peppered within it was some references to religion. And his exemption request had been approved, but then they changed their process and they made it more, they looked more closely at these exemption requests, and they decided that really what he was putting forth wasn't a religious-based exemption request. They denied it. He refused to get the vaccine and he was terminated. So that's how we got ourselves our case. The hospital's motion to dismiss was granted, and the court looked at that essay and said, this isn't religion. So this is the test that if you decide to go this route and people seek religious exemption, this is the test that you're going to be looking at, whether the exemption and whether the basis of belief set forth in the information provided by the employee addresses fundamental and ultimate questions having to do with deep and imponderable matters. Like, is the person writing and saying, I don't believe in the flu vaccine? Or are they saying, I am a Christian Scientist and I eschew all forms of medical intervention. I don't take medication. This has been my belief. I don't go to the doctor. I don't go to the hospital. That's a different, that's going to be an exemption request that you're going to need to grant. But if it's specifically with respect to the COVID vaccine, or here in the context of the flu vaccine, that was not ultimate questions and comprehensive beliefs. And, there were no external signs he wasn't going to some kind of religious-based organization, or there were no rituals and things that you associate with religion. This is just some quotes from the case. You have it in the PowerPoint, but it gives you a sense of what is and isn't religion in our circuit based on this case. Certain anti-vaccination beliefs aren't religious. If you don't believe in a vaccine, that doesn't make it religious. It has to be meeting these three parts of the test that I've set out here. So in addition to case law, the EEOC has issued guidance both in the past with regard to religion, and then in the context of the COVID pandemic, the EEOC has issued guidance as well, and it was actually recently updated. So we're going to talk about that updated guidance as well. The EEOC's definition of religion is slightly broader than the Third Circuit's test, so something to be aware of. Although the EEOC and the government more generally, obviously, is making a big push to get people vaccinated. So it will be interesting to see how the EEOC deals with these issues if people start bringing claims. So the EEOC guidance is based on a couple of Supreme Court cases involving conscientious objectors during the Vietnam War. And the question isn't whether they believe in a God, but whether the belief, and I have it in bold here, is in relation to a supreme being involving duties superior to those arising from any human relations. So again, 10,000 foot, are we talking about these very large scale beliefs and not just, anti-vaccination concerns? These are the tests set out in this Supreme Court decision, with the EEOC has adopted as its guidance. The EEOC also, in dealing with the swine flu pandemic and other things, has issued guidance and discussion letters, which are not binding, but they give you a sense of what the agency is thinking. And so it says it's unlikely, they wouldn't say it's not, it's unlikely that religious beliefs would be held to incorporate secular philosophical opposition to vaccination. So, but you have to look at the assessment of the public risk posed at a particular time. So I think that's an important thing to note as well. So the EEOC issued a guidance in 2009, which was then updated last year at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic. It was issued in the context of the H1N1 virus and influenza vaccination. So, this is what we already know. An employer can't compel all the employees to get the vaccine regardless of medical condition or religious beliefs, right? So this is what the case law says as well. You need to reasonably accommodate. So the EEOC's guidance essentially says to you, you should simply encourage, and again, this is in the context of flu, not in the context of COVID, but that you should encourage. But you can mandate, the EEOC has made clear. You can, as long as you have religious and disability exemption process. Yes, this is the EEOC's guidance, which I have cut and pasted a couple of the Q&A, which this was recently updated the very end of May. You can require the vaccine again, but you have to meet certain requirements. And so you have to go through the process. And again, is it that the employee that you're dealing with in particular has specific situations that they're on top of other people? Obviously, if you have a server in a restaurant, it's a different analysis than maybe someone in a back office doing administrative duties. So again, it's a push-pull as to whether you want to do it for everyone or just a small segment of people. And it's an individualized assessment in terms of whether the disability, as it says here, under the ADA, an employer may require an individual with a disability to meet a qualification standard, right? So you're looking at this, multi-part test, which I know that's every employer's favorite, a multi-part test, right? So you're looking at that specific employee and what the issues are. So the analysis is different depending on the job classification of the employee. And the direct threat analysis, this is again directly from the EEOC's guidance that they provided, whether the employee works alone, available ventilation. So this is all updated very recently from this EEOC guidance. So the EEOC also has provided potential reasonable accommodations and asked and indicated, is it possible that you could mitigate the risk by doing any of these things? So, and I'm sure many of you have done many of these things in terms of ventilation. Obviously, you have lots of service outdoors, permitting telework if feasible for an administrative person, if someone's, has a medical condition or religious belief. So here, these are the key takeaways from the Third Circuit's case as to what you can do. Employees don't need to belong to an organized religion to be exempt from vaccination. Employers can ask employees to explain their religious beliefs, and that goes back to the forms that you would create, asking them those questions to fill out. You can't require a clergy letter in order to consider an exemption request. The Third Circuit said you can't require that. That's very clear. And you don't have to believe in a God per se. Non-theistic beliefs can qualify as religious. So if you have an employee that the beliefs qualify as religious, or they may qualify as religious, and some organizations are more rigorous in their review of that than others, depending on how litigation averse they are, right? So these are the potential accommodations that that you can consider, including a leave of absence. I think that the non-legal considerations are a very significant issue here. And frankly, I think that the reason why many organizations have not mandated is not because of concern about the legal issues, but concern about other issues. So staffing challenges. If the vaccine is mandated, you might lose some workers. And I know staffing is such a challenge for you all right now. And so that's certainly something to consider. Obviously, there are the financial issues such that, you want to get up and running as quickly as possible. And you want to provide assurances to customers that they can feel safe in your restaurants. Employee morale, that's a consideration as well. And it goes, hand in hand with the staffing challenges. There are always going to be people who are upset with something that you do. So if you mandate the vaccine, there are going to be some people who are upset that you're mandating the vaccine because they don't want to get the vaccine for various different reasons. If you don't mandate the vaccine, you're going to have some employees who say, why aren't you mandating the vaccine? I got my vaccine. I want to feel safe in my workplace, and I want to feel comfortable that the look left, look right, that my coworkers are vaccinated. So unfortunately, there are no easy answers here, and no decision here is free from legal or business risk. So you just have to sit down and go through the factors and the analysis in a step-by-step and systematic way, and then make the best decision that you can for your organization. Obviously, every organization has an obligation to maintain a safe workplace. So there's that OSHA type consideration. Something else I wanted to make sure that I mentioned is that some organizations have created a hybrid approach. So not necessarily saying, look, if we only want these positions to be mandated vaccination. What they've done is they've said, look, current employees don't need to be vaccinated, but any new employee we hire, we're mandating that you have the vaccine and show us proof of vaccination in order to work here. Something to note, and again, as you're putting in place a process, it's really important to make sure that you're following all of the recent EEOC guidance as to how to implement the process. If you are asking people for vaccination information, that's some health information, it needs to be kept separate from the employee's personnel files. You want to make sure that all you're asking is whether someone is vaccinated, and you're getting proof of that, and you're not getting into improper medical inquiries and things of that sort. So it's really important once you decide, if you decide to mandate, that you mandate in a way that complies with the Americans with Disabilities Act, with Title VII in terms of religion, and also with the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, which goes by the acronym GINA. So it's a process that can be fraught if you decide to go that way, but and to make sure that you're not falling into any of the legal minefields that are possible when you're collecting health information from employees. I know that I went through that very, very quickly, but I wanted to leave time for questions so that I could answer your questions, because I'm sure that you all came today with specific questions or concerns that you had with regard to whether to mandate. And so I wanted to make sure that we had time to address them.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was great information that you've provided to us. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat feature, or you can unmute yourself and just ask Andrea the questions outright. If you don't feel comfortable asking them, we will definitely provide you with her contact information to reach out to her outside of the webinar. But at this time, we have opened the floor up, so please ask away if you have any questions. You were too thorough. You were too.
I don't know about that. It's I think that it is such a challenge, because it's not a simple binary decision. And I think that organizations even healthcare organizations were very hesitant to mandate. And I just think there was just a discomfort on the part of employers that they especially employers that have never mandated any type of vaccine before, to do so. And I think that they were so new, and it was under emergency use authorization. And so I think, certainly in December, very few organizations were doing so. But I think as time has gone on and more people have gotten vaccinated, I think that the calculus has continued to change, and the analysis has significantly evolved. I will, as we're waiting for some questions, I will say that if you're offering incentives, some organizations, here are sort of the range of incentives that have been offered. Some organizations have offered paid time off so that people can go get their vaccine, and maybe some more paid time off after the second vaccines to address the fact that, people may be ill for a couple of days after that second vaccine. Some organizations have provided cash incentives, although again, you can't have the cash incentive be too significant because then, then it can be coercive. And so a gift card, obviously you have to make sure that you're paying the taxes on that. Some organizations have provided gift cards, of $50 from Amazon, that sort of thing. So those are things to think about, the carrot instead of the stick as a possibility.
Is there a limit? I know you were just saying you can't go too high with monetary or gift cards, but is there like a good cash amount to think about that would work, that wouldn't get you into trouble, like $50?
Yeah, so we've been waiting for a really long time for the EEOC to issue guidance on this. And it came out the very end of May. So just, a week and a half ago. And we were really hoping that it would provide clearer lines for us as to what is or isn't coercive. And so the good news is the EEOC said you can provide monetary incentives, but they didn't say where the line is. Sitting here right now, I mean, I can't imagine that like a $50 gift card would be viewed as coercive, such that no one could turn it down. But I mean, I had read in the newspaper that there were some nursing homes offering several $100s I think it was like it was multiple. It was like more than $500, and so I think that's a gray area. So
yeah, I don't know, Andrea. I'll do anything for a $50 Amazon gift card.
Uh-oh. Well, I don't know. So I think, it would have been helpful if we had gotten more clear guidance, but at least that's something. So I think, I don't know, anything more than like $100, I'd be a little concerned about.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen any questions come up in the chat. It could just be that you covered everything so well, or that they just would feel more comfortable reaching out to you on a more one-to-one basis. Are you all right with that? If we will be providing your contact information with this presentation. So
sure, I'm happy to do that. It's I think everyone is craving, whatever is normal. I would call it normal-ish, because I don't think, things are back to normal. Although I have to say, I love that a lot of restaurants have now have these significant outdoor spaces that they've built. And I'm really hopeful that, the government entities will continue to permit that, so that they have more tables, so that they can try to come back from this as quickly as possible. It's really nice. I think it really adds something too. So I'm really encouraged that we're going to have a great summer. But a lot of organizations are thinking, they would feel better, they would sleep better at night if they would mandate. And so it's an interesting time in this area, in this legal area.
Can you?
But yeah.
Wait, we did just get a question now too. I'm sorry, Eric.
Go ahead. I was going to just say, ask Andrea if she could put it on the last slide so people can see her contact information again as well.
Yep, there it is.
And then there is a question from Laura talking about walking through the difference between EUA and full approval and trial end dates. What are the real-time implications for making mandates permissible?
So even with the emergency use authorization, you can mandate. So there's no sort of legal line that, once it gets regular use authorization, you can mandate. You can mandate now. Many organizations have already mandated. Most notably, colleges and universities have really been at the forefront of mandating. So I just think that some organizations have had some discomfort with mandating, in part because the authorization was not a regular authorization. I know that both Pfizer and Moderna have applied for a regular authorization. I don't know how quickly that will come. So I would say that's one piece of the puzzle, but it shouldn't be dispositive. But it may be almost like an employee relations issue. If and when final authorization is given, that's probably just one of many things to say that we waited, we care about you, we now have this, but it's not dispositive one way or the other.
Thank you. And actually, I don't know if you can see the chat, but Bob just put in a thank you for pulling together this information, and that he would definitely be sharing this for others to watch.
Okay, well, I'm happy to help. It's gosh, I think I speak for everyone when we're all ready. We're all ready to have a great summer. So I wish everyone good luck.
No, we really appreciate you getting on the call and being available for our members to talk with. And please join us tomorrow. Andrea will be back for a repeat performance to talk about the salary thresholds that are looming in October for our state. So please join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. For this webinar. We will be sending this out to everybody that was registered and putting it up on our website. And Andrea, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to present this information to our membership.
Happy to do it.
All right, everybody have a wonderful day.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.